All right, it's 3 p.m. Guess we'll give a few minutes for people to join. All right, I guess just to stay on time, should we go ahead and get started? As people start joining in, I guess we have this all recorded so they can listen to it later. But yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and get started then. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Johnny. I'll be your host for today's session. Before we get started, just a quick heads up, feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A anytime. We'll cover the main content first and then save a few minutes afterwards to go through everything together. So a quick intro for Mobex. We are a telecommunications service provider that was started in Tampa, Florida in 2012. We offer voice services, mobile communication solutions, and business text messaging capabilities, all designed to ensure reliable communications and give organizations visibility and control over their systems. So what are we here today to talk about? Today we focus on a challenge many businesses face. How do you keep business calls and text messages consistent and professional without forcing people to carry a second phone and without mixing work communication with personal use? That's where dual eSIM comes in. eSIM technology enables two active mobile plans on a single device, allowing organizations to issue and manage a dedicated work number with clear separation from personal use, all without additional hardware or operational complexity. In this session, we'll cover what dual eSIM is, how it functions in daily use, common use cases and deployment patterns for customer-facing teams and mobile employees, how to pilot it, what to expect, and what a first rollout can look like. So if your team has ever dealt with personal numbers being used for business calls and text messages, inconsistent caller ID, or just the headache of managing mobility, you're going to get a lot out of today's session. Now, the main portion of today's presentation will be led by our guest speaker, Robert, who specializes in helping teams evaluate and deploy dual eSIM from setup and activation to real-world user experience. Thank you, Robert, for joining us. I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Johnny.
Yeah.
We'll try video here for a while, see how the quality goes, but let's start out and talk about Mobex mold and really what it is. And that was a good, yeah. I think of it as the ability to separate personas, a work and personal set of personas. And so I won't read all these bullets here, but essentially it allows a landline or your DID to be used as a primary or the secondary number on your phone. And that's an iPhone, a Samsung device, or Pixel, something like that. And you can see on the graphic here that you're able to pick which line you want to use when you make a phone call. And there's some more diagrams or pictures of phones and how it looked during the use. But essentially, we call this a universal endpoint. So it's not an application, it's actually an eSIM goes in existing phone. So we're using also LTE, or you may have heard it called VoLTE, where you have a cellular voice call instead of a VoIP call or a call over a data connection. So it tends to have better quality than using one of the app-based um, calling situations. So that landline or desk number, we're extending it out to a mobile device. And we also talk a little bit later about the POTS replacement opportunity. And we'll go into that in a little more detail. So let me tell you a story real quick. It came full of things with my situation, my work situation. Previous employer, they I decided I didn't want to use my cell phone, my personal cell phone for work. So I got a new cell phone, a work cell phone. And for about 2 weeks, I carried two cell phones, my personal and a work cell phone. And it became untenable. I actually Velcroed them back to back, trying to use one to the other. And I gave the other cell phone to my kids and ended up using my personal number as my work number, my work cell phone. With Mobex Mobile, I wouldn't have to do that. I could have my personal number and my landline work number on the same device. Um, I was actually interviewing and visiting adult care facilities for my mother. And after a tour, the marketing lady said, "Hey, here's my business card. Give me a call anytime if you have any questions." And I had to ask, I said, is it your personal cell phone or is it a, atrium garden cell phone? She said, "Oh, no, it's my personal. Call me whenever you want." Well, I thought to myself, why don't she answer the phone every time it rings? There's going to be a lot of numbers that she does not know, a lot of unknown numbers. So she always has to answer it in a business professional like manner. This way, when somebody would call, she would be able to use with Mobex Mobile her landline, her work number, and know that it's related to the business. It's somebody she's given a tour to, or it's her children, or what have you. So that was a couple of real world examples there. Let's step on to the next slide. So essentially, for Mobex Mobile, when you look here on the left-hand side, there are just three options. You could use the Teams desktop client, you could use a desk phone, the hard phone, or you could use the client, the Teams mobile app on your phone. With the advent of Mobex Mobile down here below, you can see that we have the ability to use a native dialer. And that's really more muscle memory where people tend not to use app to make a phone call. They just pick up their phone and they dial. And so here we make it easy, not an app. It's just using that same interface to phone calls or to text messages. And that's a very important thing too. You can message from your landline and receive messages to your landline with Mobex Mobile. The right side of the screen shows that this UC platform, in this case, Teams, we're able to, using the existing phone numbers and dial plans, all the call control and routing. If you're doing any kind of recording, you're doing analytics, or you have adjuncts like call recording, you have messaging solutions, all of that carries through with Mobex Mobile at endpoint. And without it, there is no other way to measure what somebody is doing on their mobile phone. So here you have that centralized set of control and secure as well. So maybe there's an example where there's a regulated industry. It might be financial services, it could be insurance, it could be what have you. You have the ability to capture and record phone calls or messages, archive, store, archive, retrieve, what have you. That's necessary. So let's go ahead and step to the next slide. One of the things that is exciting about Mobex Mobile is that it is extremely easy to deploy. Um, I received a new phone. I bought a new phone a couple of weeks ago, and not just when I was a new employee a year plus ago, but couple, 3 weeks ago, I said, "Hey, Johnny, I've got a new phone." He said, "Hang on, let me send you a QR code." And I scanned the QR code with my phone, and bam, the eSIM was added and configured. And I could make and take calls. And that was all in minutes. So not an application, just a quick setup through a QR code. And that's all done from the Teams administrator. Very, very easy to do. You receive an email as a user with the QR code, scan it, and it self configures. And so there's no need to do any kind of gymnastics to get an application set up. Very few steps. Okay, let's carry on. Next slide. So there are situations where we call it a worker on the move or workers on the move. There's a number of industries, and again, I won't read all of these here, but big vertical tends to be anybody who is not at their desk full time, who is out and about, whether it's within a building, a campus, or traveling. And it could be hospitality, medical. Johnny, I know we have that client who has a number of commercial properties, and they're the people that travel amongst the property managers, and the maintenance staff within and throughout the campuses.
Yep.
We also have a client with um, access gates where maybe there's not a whether it's a phone line or a internet line to be able to put these gate entry systems. You can use Mobex Mobile there and actually use a physical SIM in these devices to provide access. So we mentioned compliance sensitive organizations, financial services and insurance and so forth. But think about, again, those workers who are out and about and not always near their midst. So another word that has come up, automobile dealers. So think about when you're there on the lot, whether for looking, buying a car, or having your car in for service. So you have the salespeople that are out and about on the lot, or they're back to their cubicle, and maybe they're going to the finance department and coming back to you. They're out and about. They're not always at their desk, but now they can carry their desk phone with them in their hand on their mobile, their personal mobile. There's also the service advisors who are not sitting at a desk all day. They're out about in the shop or back at the parts section or out in the customer section. So you're talking about somebody who has the ability now to be accessible where they may not have been before. All right, let's carry on to the next slide. And really, what this slide is depicting, it's not just that on the left side you see IT managers would favor mobile only communications instead of landlines, and the employees or the employers would let eSIMs on mobile phones to replace the best phones, which there's a huge cost savings in that regard from not just cost of the phones, but everything supported with the LAN switching gear and so forth, and the power requirements. But this number on the upper hand right, the 6%, where employees prefer mobile communications over utilizing the what we call the over-the-top app, like the Microsoft Teams mobile app. Now, our goal with Mobex Mobile is not to replace Microsoft Teams app. It's just that we're seeing people don't use those apps like we think they do, because again, it's muscle memory. I got my phone and I use it. I use the native sort of regular way to make phone calls. And other little anecdote, I was talking to a friend of mine who he said, so where are you working? What do you do? How do you what's this whole thing? And I told him, and he goes, oh yeah. He's interrupted me. I got that. I got that. I got he shows me, he says, let me show you my app that I have. And he said, see, I can see everybody in the company and they can dial and I can dial. And I said, okay, so you use that app when you're calling people back at the office. He says, no. I said, well, they use the app to call you. And he says, well, no. They just call my cell phone. So, and it was funny. And he's rolling his eyes. He's like, okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't use it. Well, I got it. I don't use it. So real world example here. All right, let's keep going. So this slide, we had talked about one of the value props of replacing the desk phones. We're not seeing a lot of people buy desk phones. Some people still do. What's interesting also is there are desk phones that can take a SIM card, and there are some that we support with that as well. There can be a tremendous cost savings in not deploying hard phones, the IP hard phones or the SIP phones. The next graphic down with the two phones, you don't have to carry two phones anymore. You have to carry the personal device and the business device. It can all be on one, which kind of goes into the bottom graphic of there are companies that provide their employees a stipend for utilizing their personal phones. And that and that's wonderful for the employee. And the employer doesn't have to pay for a corporate liable device. Those numbers can be quite significant. My previous company, the stipend was $130 a month. And if you could cut that stipend and save that employer money, either eliminate it or by even half, it's a tremendous savings. And they still have an ability to utilize a personal phone, they can put their business phone number on it, in addition to not just having a stipend for that personal phone use. The engagement and experience here, it's really about the accessibility and usability. Everybody carries their personal phone. They always have their personal phone. And from a usability perspective, again, I call it that muscle memory. We grab our phone and we go to the phone icon and we start dialing or we start texting. And again, that's something being able to text from your work line, a mobile number, has a lot of valuable coverage down here. Full compliance, there with the call recording or the secure messaging solutions that we can provide, staying connected globally. We'll talk about the international coverage and the ability to roam at low to no costs. And then there's some disaster recovery solutions as well, should anything occur, to prevent communications from a landline perspective. So, okay, let's go on. And we've talked about some of these, and I don't intend to read all of these, but procurement, being able to have a single provider, Mobex, for mobile services as well as your unified communications requirements. Not going to a wireless company, and very competitive wireless plans that we offer, from unlimited to utilizing what we call background data, using the data of the primary SIM. We talk about that uniform interface. It's the same native dollars, same native messaging that everybody uses every day, regardless of the Pixel device, the Samsung or iPhone. Um, we talk about the control. You're not having a unmonitored personal mobile, and not that it watching what's happening on the personal phone, but it's managing that corporate communications and recording if necessary, but having visibility into what that user is doing. Salespeople, when they leave, they tend to take their contacts with them. Now the contacts are on the corporate side, on that Mobex mobile side. Again, that manning, being able to answer the phone, hello, this is Robert with Mobex or Donnie with Mobex, and knowing that's a business call writing. And similarly, making an outbound call, the dialed party knows that it's a business call instead of an unknown number. They know that it's Mobex calling. Okay, let's keep going. So we talked about one business number, and it's integrated with not just Teams, but a number of unified communication systems. We talked about how quick the installation is. Single device. It can be with a personal device or a company mobile. We were talking with a customer earlier with 1,200 users, and that's with corporate owned devices, and we can be a second SIM in that. And there was a lot of excitement about that. And then a single price plan that includes all roaming. So essentially, no roaming cost, and we'll talk about that shortly. All right, let's keep going. So we have the concept of home and away countries. So the home countries up top, these are where if you're traveling, you just make a phone call while you're in Italy, or I can make a phone call from the US to Italy and there's no roaming charges. When I'm in Italy, there's no roaming charges when I call an Italian number. Same thing with any of those above. And that's year round. And there's 17 countries there. Now, down below these home away countries, similar, but I have up to 90 days over a year where I haven't had that same capability. Again, no international roaming. So if you have anybody who's doing international travel to these countries, then there's no setting up with a mobile carrier for each country or letting them know that you're going there to make sure you get the international rate, the rate plan, so you don't have that bill shock of multiple minutes at an absurd rate. So you don't have to acquire a German plan. You can just utilize Mobex Mobile. And then we have, if you're not in any of those countries, we have international roaming. So let's go to the next slide. And this is where, as a day pass, and it's a single price, you can go to 128 other countries, and it's valid for a 24-hour period, and that's unlimited talk and messaging and a gig of data. So we're very sensitive to those international travelers and providing a solution, whether it's 39 home away country or the other country. And if they're not on our list, let us know and we'll get what the roadmap there. And I think we have some additional countries in EMEA and APAC coming on later this year. All right, let's talk about POTS, the plain old telephone system. So think of that as your landline at home. It could be an elevator line. It could be a blue light line. And that's what these graphics are meant to be around the US. The carriers have said they're going away. They've put that day out a few times, but there are many millions of lines out there. If it's a CVS or well, Rite Aid's not in business anymore, or Walgreens, they typically have a number of these lines servicing the local stores. It could be um, elevators, blue light phones, fax machines, um, fire alarms, the card swiping or the POS devices, um, door entry or security systems. And these lines, we've seen that they used to be back in the day $10, $15 a month piece. I heard of one the other day that was nearly $500 a month. And carriers were charging that because they could. It was a needed line. There was no alternative solution. Well, with Mobex Mobile, we have the ability to provide a solution. And let's go ahead and jump to um, the next slide. So while those lines are going away, we don't know when. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. So we have a replacement strategy where there are a number of devices that are certified. They can utilize either an eSIM or a physical SIM. And eventually what you're doing is you're moving from those copper lines to cellular connectivity. And instead of using like an IoT data SIM where you're doing voice over IP, that the quality could be less than ideal, we're doing cellular communications, that voice over LTE. We're doing the actual mobile communications. And there's one of our customers who was using IoT data SIMs from Verizon for these devices, these devices in elevators and having less than ideal communication results. So when they found out that we had an order, they started ordering physical SIMs for that communications. So we talked about the carrier timelines and the uncertainty. And at some point, there will be a migration that is forced. So what you're able to do now is do it on your own time and at a significantly lower cost. Another advantage to the quality of the voice over LT communication is the fact that this is now going on the use. So you have the availability with that with the PID, have that as part of your UC system, do the reporting of it and management of that. So we have a number of, again, devices, these analog converters and desk phones, work with manufacturers, and we actually have a different pricing plan for these kinds of devices beyond the VoIP services for mobile communications. So if you haven't run this as an opportunity, I would say keep your eyes and ears out because there is a ton of opportunity there to utilize a little bit more for life. So let me pause there. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I think that brings us to the end, Johnny. Um, we'd
Yes.
love to hear from the folks and um, work with you and your customers.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for taking the time, and that was really helpful and knowledgeable. I appreciate all the information. Hopefully, that inspired some questions, and we can see if anybody has any follow-up information that they'd like to know about. But I think you did a great job of covering everything pretty well there. Now let's see.
Right.
Are there any questions? Here we go. Well, let me read off some of these questions then real quick. Let's see. What role does native mobile capabilities and eSIM technology play in shaping the future of enterprise communication? That question is from Elfie.
Okay, what role does eSIM and mobile
Yeah. What
shape?
role does native mobile capabilities and eSIM technologies play in shaping the future of enterprise communications?
So I think what what we've seen, especially since COVID, is that the work location is very, very different and it's ever changing.
Mhm.
So the ability to deploy enterprise communication solutions anywhere is absolutely key. Um,
Mhm.
Everybody has a mobile phone. Now you're able to put a landline from the unified communication system, a business line, onto that same um, cellular device, that same mobile phone. And while you can get a second SIM from, let's say you're a Verizon customer, you can say, okay, I need another SIM. I need another mobile number. That's a mobile number. That has nothing to
Mhm.
do with the internet. That's not integrated to unified communications. So I see it as being integral to that enterprise communications environment. Um, has been continually, and even having the ability to take a SIM-based IP phone and put it, for example, in a construction job trailer that you're not running phone lines to, where you may not have a data connection. You're using cellular communications, or in a retail location, or spinning up temporary space and able to just deploy this without any layer one infrastructure, without any kind of cabling. So we've seen it as very integral. Look at that question.
Nice. Thank you. All right. Our next question is, what factors tend to influence user adoption when organizations introduce new communication capabilities to mobile devices? Oh,
Yeah, I think it's, was there anything else to that,
nope.
Johnny?
That was it. Nope.
Okay. I think it's, and from my own personal perspective, as well as what we've seen, it's ease of use. And so don't make it painful for me. Don't make it cost me in terms of my time, or make a lot of effort to utilize.
Hmm.
Uh, as an employer, not realize that I use my phone number for corporate communication and mobile device management on my phone. So shame on me. I didn't realize that. But what that meant was when I left, my phone got, I won't say it got whacked, but a lot of things got removed and I lost, many contacts in Outlook because of this mobile device management. But I think if you make it easy, the adoption uh, is there. And talking about, again, not changing the way people communicate, it's adhering to the way people already communicate. They're
Mhm.
using it every day, and it's a business communication device. We're just now extending that corporate communications to what they're already doing on a daily basis.
Mhm. Very true. All right. Next question here. This one kind of ties into the first one. With organizations rethinking the role of desk phones, how are you seeing enterprise communication strategies evolve, especially for mobile and hybrid workforces?
Desk phones can be expensive. Um, we've seen a number of companies no longer deploy desk phones because they see that their employees are either using the Teams app for communications on their laptops or desktops,
Mhm.
and if they're going mobile, they're using their phone. They're not using those over the top apps.
Mm-hmm.
It's we're just not seeing that people buy a lot of phones, or business phones anymore. I mentioned the business phone that is able to take a SIM to communicate. That's what it seems to be heading, is the ability to use cellular with um, a business phone footprint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes a lot of
So,
sense. All right. What else we have here? How do you see enterprise mobility evolving over the next few years?
oh boy, that's golly. If I could see it over the next few years, that would be wonderful. Um, I think consumers tend to drive what we're seeing in the business world evolve. That's a good question. I think
Mm-hmm.
we look at the consumers and take the cues from them, and
Mm-hmm.
and look at how the younger generations communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, I don't have a great answer to that one. I really don't.
Yeah,
I
things are
wish.
always changing. That's all right. We have some more questions here. From Erica, what are some considerations IT leaders should evaluate when extending unified communications beyond traditional endpoints? Mm.
Yeah, think I think cost is always there. What is the cost, and
Mm-hmm.
what is that benefit? What's the give and get? What am I getting in return for being able to do something that's non-traditional? And is it facilitating communications? Is it inhibiting communications? And um, I don't always like the word control, but can I have visibility? There's talk about, everyone talks about AI and AI with communications. When so much of communications is done through a mobile device, if people are not using a a communications channel that can be mined from an AI perspective, because if it's a personal device and a personal mobile number, the enterprise doesn't have visibility, and they're not able to
Mm-hmm.
utilize AI like they could if they were, in a traditional office setting. So, yeah,
Very true.
cost benefit.
Mhm. No, very true. All right, what else do we have here? All right, this one's what are some of the biggest limitations companies face when trying to extend their business numbers to mobile devices today? Interesting
Oh,
take. What are
good.
some of the limitations that companies faces?
Um,
And try.
I'm not aware of anybody who does what we do, because we have not a million and one, but many, many patents covering what we do.
Mhm.
Um, think the biggest thing we might run into is that a device needs to be unlocked so that you can implement a second SIM. So
Mhm.
that's one of the things that comes up. And I would say, if the device is not unlocked, that's really more of a business discussion. And let's talk about how we might be able to help um, with that device. So far as I know, T-Mobile tends to be a little more flexible in unlocking devices for a
Mhm.
business. The other carrier can be much and need. This is with a device that you get it unlocked, it needs to be paid for. It needs to be fully
Mhm.
paid for. So we run into that from time to time. The device
Mhm.
does need to be unlocked. I think that's probably the biggest thing that
Mhm.
we've run. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's been some great advice. I think that's all the questions we have here at the moment. But if anybody has any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Contact at mobex.biz. We're happy to continue answering questions as they come up, as you think about them after reviewing this presentation. Um, Robert, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your knowledge and expertise in this field. I think we can leave it at that unless anybody else has any follow-up questions or missed anything, but I think we covered it pretty well today.
Right. Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here, and we'll get this information out to you soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Thank you, folks.
Bye.